Hello, everyone, and welcome to the channel. Welcome back, youtube.com/ZebraBreaks. Referee Brandon Toll here, and we're doing some special content bonus video here this week as we are heading to Super Bowl 56 coming up on Sunday. The Bengals and the Rams in LA. And I thought we'd do a little preview video here. And I have, obviously, you can see on the screen my guest here, the editor-in-chief of Gridiron on Tap, and it does NFL coverage for Fansided, and the co-host of the Laces Out podcast, historian and pro wrestling fan. Welcome, Jarrett Bailey. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate your time.
What's going on, buddy? It's good to do this.
So I guess the opening question I'm going to ask is, how crazy is this? Is this how the story that's laid out? Obviously, you know, most people think the Rams would have been at this point this year. Obviously, it's going to be crazy with the Bengals and where they've come from, but just the situation of how we've gotten to this point, just kind of how crazy is all this in your opinion?
Yeah, man. Like I thought, you know, in terms of the Rams, you know, they made all the moves that they had for this reason. You know, that's why, you know, you give up all they did for a Jalen Ramsey. That's why you do what you do to get Matthew Stafford and Von Miller. That's why you sign Odell Beckham. Like they did everything that they possibly could to stay in win now mode. You know, you look at this team compared to the team that went to the Super Bowl a few years ago. It's a completely different cast of characters. Yeah. You know, it was Jared Goff, Todd Gurley, Brandon Cooks that year. Now it's Matthew Stafford, you know, Cam Akers, Sony Michel, and Cooper Kupp running the show. So it's a credit to Les Snead and Sean McVay and obviously all the players for them for Los Angeles. And then, you know, man, like I thought Cincinnati would be better. I thought that they would be in the playoff conversation. I'd be lying if I said that I thought that they would make it this far. A lot of people would be lying if they said, oh yeah, I thought the Bengals would be in the Super Bowl. No, you didn't. So, you know, look, man, Joe Burrow's fantastic. Their roster is very good. You know, they stole Mike Hilton from Pittsburgh, which, you know, I'm still salty about as a Steeler fan. But, I mean, as much credit as Joe Burrow gets, you know, I talked to Ken Anderson a few weeks ago about all this. By the way, go read that piece, Bengals fans, on fansided.com, please.
Yes.
Where, you know, he's talking about the patience of Mike Brown for letting Zach Taylor just get all this in place, and it's paying off. So, you know, could not be happier for, you know, they're a very fun team. It's hard to root against a team like that. So very happy for them, very happy for the city as a whole.
As a Bengals fan, I can safely say going into this season, Super Bowl was not an expectation in any way, shape, or form. For me, once it looked like they were going to have the parts in place to go to the playoffs, for me, it was like, all right, baby steps, one step at a time. Let's get the monkey off our back. Let's win one game. And then, you know, at that point, you know, we're playing with house money. I definitely did not have the confidence that the guys in the locker room do in terms of how they feel about the team. So for me, it was not necessarily a low bar, but it was a bar that at least could have seemed to be, you know, achievable. Not what we're going on now. I said it to fans, I'm a St. Louis Blues fan. Like I have 2019 Stanley Cup champion Blues vibes with this team. Like the whole worst to first concept. Blues did that. You know, they were worst. They were the last place in the league on January 1st and went back and won the whole thing. I'm getting the same vibes out of this team. So as I was doing research for this, because, you know, I wanted to be prepared for this, just kind of, you know, getting some numbers and some facts and stuff about the matchup. Sure. I learned that the Rams, you know, they gave up a lot to be in this position that they're in. Like, if I'm not correct, they don't have a first round pick for like the next 3 years.
They don't have a first round pick until 2024. Yeah.
Do you feel that's a lot to give? I mean, obviously, you know, it may be easy to say given the fact they're in the Super Bowl now, but they're win now mode. So they've got this window is however many years this works out, you know, given within the constraints of salary cap and everything else. Do you think they gave up a lot with all those draft picks to get into this position? Let's say this is their only opportunity at the Super Bowl this year.
I mean, yes, they gave up a lot in terms of draft picks, but I think that they're proving that there's more than one way to build a team. Like they have no problem buying their team, and I respect the hell out of that because people very much overstate the value of draft picks. Like, yes, like if you hit on a first round pick, that's great, but most of them aren't going to hit. Like that's just the fact of it. Like not all 32 first round picks are going to be Pro Bowl guys. They're not going to be all pros. There's going to be a select few of them that are, you know, at that all pro level. There's going to be some of them that are, you know, solid role players. There's going to be some that just don't pan out whatsoever. And the Rams know that. And they're saying, look, if we're going to be in win now mode, we can't do that with a bunch of guys that are rookies and young. Let's just go get guys that are proven talent. Teams that, you know, have these guys who maybe not have a quarterback or aren't in a position to win now that are looking to get into rebuilds. Let's give them a ton of picks for that player. and use that to our advantage. So Leslie's just proven that there's more than one way to bake a cake when it comes to building a contender, and good for them for doing that. So yes, they've given up a lot, but in retrospect, it's done them wonders.
It's probably a little easier too if you're Stan Kroenke and you have the kind of money that Stan Kroenke has. St. Louis. Once again, I'm a Blues fan. St. Louis knows all too well about Stan Kroenke, and trust me, there ain't good sentiment about him in St. Louis. I can say that for absolute certainty. Not like where the Bengals actually not only use the draft, but use free agency to their advantage to build at least the parts that they have now. You know what I mean? Hopefully, Lord willing, they're going to look, to utilize the draft and hopefully free agency to build that offensive line, because that is the glaring red herring of a bullseye that the Rams hopefully, are going to try to exploit in the Super Bowl on Sunday. So, what do you think about that? I mean, everybody's talked about it. I mean, the offensive line is suspect. Call it what it is. They have moments of glaring, just of shine. You know what I mean? But what do you think about this offensive line matched up, against just the absolute stout defense, the Rams?
For a team that gave up 9 sacks against Tennessee, like there could be moments of the Super Bowl where Aaron Donald just eats Joe Burrow. So I would keep an eye on, like, if you're somebody who doesn't have a rooting interest in this, I would keep an eye on Aaron Donald's MVP odds. Right now they're at plus 1,600. If he gets 3 sacks and like maybe a strip sack or something of that nature and the Rams win, he could be one of the guys that are looked at getting MVP. So look, the offensive line, there are tons of people, myself included, who are critical of the Jamar Chase pick. They're not in this position without Jamar Chase.
You and me both. I made no bones about it, and I've said it on this channel and other videos I've done. I will gladly eat crow. I was not sold on them drafting Jamar Chase. I honestly thought they needed to go to the offensive line right away, but you're dead on. This does not happen without Jamar Chase, period, end of story. It's as simple as it gets, and I'm first to say that I was wrong. They knew better than I do. That's why they're getting paid the dollars to make those decisions in the room on draft day than I am, sitting back watching on TV. So,
you look at what the Bengals have, like, it's a complete contrast to how the Rams have built their team. Like, they drafted Joe Burrow, they drafted Joe Mixon, they drafted Chase, they drafted T. Higgins, they drafted Tyler Boyd. They brought in Trey Hendrickson this year, but they drafted Sam Hubbard. I believe they drafted Logan Wilson. Jesse Bates has been there for a long time. So, their team has been really just built from within. So it's very opposite ends of the spectrum with both teams that are in the Super Bowl. But yeah, man, like the offensive line, I think that they just have to accept the fact that there's going to be times where they get beat. Like, this is going to be a situation where Burrow's going to be running for his life on, a select number of plays. If you can set a number, though, let's say, okay, if we can just keep him out of Joe's face, for, let's say 7 or less plays, if we can do that, then we've got a pretty good shot. And look, the pressure's on the Rams a hell of a lot more than it's on the Bengals, because the Rams were expected to be in this position because they, of everything that they gave up to be here, they were at bare minimum, they had to get to the NFC Championship game. But, they did all that to win a Super Bowl. If you're Cincinnati, you're playing loose as hell. There's no pressure on you to win this game. You weren't expected to be here. Hell, a lot of people didn't expect you to even be in the playoffs. So there's zero pressure on Cincinnati. They can play loose. They can try a bunch of different things. I think that we're going to see a more conservative Rams team, if anything, just because, they're going to be playing, with a lot of pressure on their shoulders compared to Cincinnati.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing especially, I was in Kansas City. We talked about it earlier. I was in Kansas City for the AFC title game. And one thing that really stuck out to me was the Bengals' ability to be able to make adjustments at halftime. It was literally a tale of two halves. They stopped Mahomes in 6 consecutive drives after just getting walked all over in the first half. It was to the point where Kansas City fans were high-fiving me on positive Bengals plays, on positive yardage plays in the first half, because they felt bad. That feeling was just there for it. And so I think that the consistency needs to be there in the entire game, 60 minutes. I feel that, and correct me, let me get your opinion on this. I feel that the Rams, in some way, that this matchup, it's not exactly Titans-Bengals as it was in the divisional round, but it's somewhere close to it. It's not going to be as comparative as it is to Mahomes. I think the defensive threats are there. They're going to be able to, they're going to try to flush Joe out. He's going to have to make quick decisions. would you feel that it's more comparable? This matchup is more comparable to the Titans divisional round matchup, or more geared towards the Kansas City AFC title game?
I think it's more geared toward Kansas City just because Tennessee is incredibly overrated. Like,
okay,
I came in like when the playoffs, were finalized and everything. I said, okay, I think the Bengals are going to win, and if they win, they're absolutely beating Tennessee because Tennessee defensively they were much better than everybody thought, but offensively, like it was Derrick Henry or bust. Like, look what happened when he went down. Ryan Tannehill had a bad year. Offensively, They couldn't do anything. Like, I understand that AJ Brown went down, but look, the Julio Jones trade was all. I hated it from the start because he's a shell of what he used to be, and lo and behold, he got hurt. Like, Tennessee was the most overrated 1 seed in a very long time because they played in a god-awful division, and they got their way through it and whatnot. But the division that they play in was a large factor in why they got that spot. So I wasn't a big fan of Tennessee going into it. So you look at what Stafford and the Rams have done offensively this year. They've been fantastic. Stafford threw too many picks throughout the year. I think he threw 17 total on the year, which, I mean, if you're a Rams fan, you don't want to see that at all during the Super Bowl. But, I mean, they're very good offensively. Stafford's showing, like, I'm a big Matthew Stafford guy. He's showing everybody who doubted him in Detroit that he's always been this guy. He was just stuck in a dumpster fire organization. Now he's got, Cooper Kupp, and he's got a good defense, and he's showing what he can do. So I think this is much more, the Rams aren't as good as the Chiefs to me. Like, Stafford obviously isn't as good as Mahomes. But defensively, I mean, they're still very solid, and they've got a ton of weapons on offense. I think they're a much better team than Tennessee is.
Yeah, Stafford, it's nice to see. And even as a Bengals fan, it's nice, being in the Midwest, and I'm up in Detroit. I got friends in Detroit a lot. Like, to be able to see just the years of just bad football and everyone trying to pit it on Stafford, and for Stafford now to go to LA, doing what he's done in LA. He's now in the Super Bowl, just to kind of really prove it wrong to everyone that just was absolutely just dogging him for all the years there. So even as a Bengals fan, good on Matt Stafford. I like, those stories where it takes a long time. Like, I mean, the Bengals are that example, you know what I mean? All the years that the Bengals have just been in the bottom third, if not the bottom of the league, to turn around now. And now we're, the talk of the league. I guess that leads me to the next question, since we've talked about, stories, whether it's Stafford or the Bengals. There's a lot of talking, I don't know how to feel about this myself, but if the Bengals do win the Super Bowl, could this be considered the greatest underdog story in NFL history?
Definitely be up there. Everything with Foles will always be, everybody's always going to talk about that year and whatnot and that game.
Yeah.
So it might not rival that. It might not beat that just because, Joe Burrow is so fantastic and that team's so, obviously coming into the year, we didn't know what they were going to be. But as the season went on, like, everybody's like, okay, Joe Burrow's incredible. This offense is incredible. Jamar Chase is really good. But in terms of like a preseason standpoint, like going from, what they were last year, all the uncertainty with Joe's knee up into the Super Bowl, it's definitely up there. I'm trying to think back, like Hostetler winning it as a backup with the Giants, Doug Williams winning it as a backup with Washington. I think those are some other notable ones. People don't remember, but Brady winning his Super Bowl, that was a pretty big underdog game. I think they were 13-point underdogs that game. So that was, that was a big one. So it'll definitely be up there. I don't know if it's quite the biggest in Super Bowl history. Like, the Jets winning Super Bowl III was huge just because that helped, cement the NFL AFL merger. So there's a lot of other ones that are in that conversation, but I think if they win it, in terms of what people expected them to be versus what they ended up being and winning the entire thing, it's definitely in the conversation.
Yeah, as I was doing my research on this, the statistics that I was just pulling out for this is just amazing on the whole. First of all, the one thing that really stood out to me was just how, from a statistical standpoint, when you look at points per game, points allowed, yards allowed, total yards on average, the Rams and the Bengals are actually so similar in all those statistical categories. I think the biggest difference that stood out to me was in terms of, how many running yards the Bengals allowed out, and that's just the nature of just, the way they play. I mean, the first half of the Kansas City game was a great example of it. Until they made the defensive changes, started sending three, they're just sitting back, and they're willing to give up, 5, 10, 5, 6, 7, 8 yards there in the short term, to ultimately get that stop that they want. So I think that, and maybe this is just me as a Cincinnati fan. Once again, not living in Cincinnati, but seeing a little bit of the national news, there's the feeling, at least I'm getting in some ways, outside of the story, the Cinderella story, the Bengals getting to the Super Bowl, is, it doesn't feel like it, from at least from a lot of the talk that at least I'm hearing, that it's really going to be a very even match, at least on paper. Give me one thing. What's the biggest thing that, on both teams, LA and Cincinnati, like the biggest thing that, could really determine whether or not this is a close game versus whether this could be something where you may be turning it off after the halftime show?
In terms of the Rams, what they need to do is protect the ball. Stafford can't get careless. He's gotten careless with the ball various times this year, and it's cost them, specifically against the 49ers game. It didn't cost them against Baltimore just because Tyler Huntley was playing quarterback and they couldn't do anything. But yeah, he's gotten careless with the ball. So if he protects the ball, and they can do what they do, in terms of what Kupp's been doing, Van Jefferson's been getting involved a lot. Odell's had a very good resurrection of his career in Los Angeles. So yeah, if he protects the ball and they're doing what they do offensively, Los Angeles is going to be fine. In terms of Cincinnati, we got to live at that. And, aside from, the offensive line plays their most important thing. Don't get me wrong. But if you can't slow down what the Rams do offensively, like if they're at their peak, they're hard to stop, man. So if it turns into a shootout, which as somebody who is neutral in this, please, I would love to see a 38-35 Super Bowl.
We all like high scoring games. I'm a Bengals fan, but even I like high scoring games. You like the action. You like to be able to be in it all the way.
So, if both teams play their absolute best game, I think the Rams win. But if it's going to come down to, it's so cheesy, but it's going to come down to who's going to make the mistake. If both teams are at their absolute best, it's going to come down to, okay, who's going to blink first. So for the Bengals, it's just, for both teams, really, it's just limiting what both teams do through the air, because both teams are going to throw, they're both going to air it out. They're both going to they're going to let it fly. And then, for Cincinnati, it's okay, let's limit how much pressure Joe Burrow gets under. Let's try to contain Aaron Donald as much as humanly possible. And like I said, if you can do it for, keep him out of Joe Burrow's face, for a set number of plays, you protect the ball, a few splash plays, then they're going to be in it. But if both teams are at their absolute best, I think the Rams win. That said, I'm very okay with whatever happens. It's hard to root against either of these teams, but contain what the Rams do for Cincinnati, and then keep Aaron Donald out of Joe Burrow's face for the Bengals. That's going to be their biggest thing.
The way I kind of feel about this is kind of the way I feel about Kansas City. When the Bengals played Kansas City both times this year, they essentially had to play, at least the way I felt going into it, they had to play a perfect game, to be able to, because of just what Kansas City brings to the table on both sides of the ball. We all know what Mahomes can do, as advertised. So I think the Bengals, at least, I think they're in that same feeling that they're going to have to play basically a perfect game, against the Rams. I don't think the Rams feel that way. And I think maybe it's, there may be a little too much comfort on the Rams. I'm not trying to say they're taking them lightly in any way, shape, or form. The Bengals did what they had to do. They're here for a reason. But I think there may be a different feeling or a different mentality in the locker room of the Rams versus the feeling and the mentality in the Bengals. And it's not the why not us concept, not the morale or anything like that. It's the Bengals have had to play this way basically since week 17. That's really kind of that mentality kicked off, because they played Kansas City at home, and they've had to play that way each week, to be able to continue to have the next week. Whereas the Rams, obviously they know they want to be at this point. Do you think that feeling may give kind of, I don't want to say, I guess, lull them into a little false sense of security? They're going to be prepared, but you can be prepared all you want to. If you're not in that mental space, you know what I mean? Weird things can happen.
I would say yes if they didn't have their own struggles this year, because, losing 3 in a row like they did through November, I think a lot of people wrote them off. Okay. So I think that, in a lot of ways that did them some favors, because, not a lot of people expected them to be at this point, at that point in the year too. So, when you lose to San Francisco the way that they did, and then they go on that little skid for a little bit, a lot of people said, okay, well, the Rams seem to be a team that could be a one and done if they get to the playoffs. So I think that definitely turned out to be a blessing in disguise for them. But, if they would have ran through the season and gone something like 13-4, 14-3, and didn't really have a lot of adversity, I would definitely say that, they could be, kind of lulled to sleep a little bit, or, take a team lightly. But right now, I think that they're in a position where, especially after that San Francisco loss at home to end the regular season, they're like, okay, we've got to, that was the kick in the ass we needed to just kind of wake up. So I think that for them is kind of maybe nullified any sort of taking anybody lightly.
Fair enough. Yeah. The one thing that really I liked when I was doing my research is basically they're both the 4 seeds. So this is the first time since seeding started in 1975 that it is 2 4 seeds with no top, 3, 2, or 1 seeds in this. And I love it. I love, I'm a sucker for the underdog story. Always have been. I mean, I'm a Cincinnati fan in more than just football. So, being that perennial underdog just kind of fits in my wheelhouse. So it's going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to it. I got plans. Are you doing anything are you just going to watch it from home? Or are you going to a party? You got any plans or where you're going to watch?
I'm hosting a party, so that'll be exciting. I'll have people over and whatnot. Perfect. It'll be a good time.
All right. Last thing I'll ask you, you want to give a prediction on the score?
If life on the line, I would say Rams 28, Bengals 24. I think it'll be close, regardless of the outcome. I think it's going to be close. I don't think anybody's blowing anybody out. So I'm hoping that Cincinnati, the offensive line, can just let it be close, because if Joe's running for his life all game, it's not gonna be. But I think that they'll do enough to keep it close.
Yeah, I think they'll do enough to keep close. I think, once again, I'll make the buzz that you see in my hat. I'm a Bengals fan. I also tend to err on the pessimistic side of things. So I've said it I said it through the Tennessee game. I said it through the AFC title game, even there at Arrowhead, they've got a fighting chance. You know what I mean? They've proven they can do it. They've beaten the best the AFC had to offer to get to this point. It wasn't a walk in the park at all. I think the offensive line is going to come to play. I think, that right side is going to be suspect. But if they can give Burrow the time they need in the pocket, or even just the time need to be able to go through his check downs and make those plays happen. If Jamar's got the one-on-one coverage, or look for your other options. Hopefully they get back CJ Uzomah. Sounds like, the sprain of his MCL, hopefully is not as bad as what they anticipated, for at least what we saw in Arrowhead on Sunday. It's going to be close either way. I would like to see the Lombardi Trophy come to Cincinnati for the first time ever. It's been way too long. And I think the city and the fan base, myself included, I don't think we're going to be able to know what to do with ourselves if it does happen. So, anything you want to plug here while we wrap this up here?
No, I mean, follow me on Twitter at JBaileyNFL. It's where I put all my stuff, the links to my articles and whatnot, all my videos too. So, just give me a follow there. What are the odds? Does Impact have replica belts? Because I want one.
No, but let's talk afterwards, and I'll point you in a direction where you can go.
I'm going to be pointed in a direction.
We're baby stepping it. We're baby stepping when it comes to things like that. That's the reason why Impact's. We're still here at 20 years later. Especially with this whole. I mean, I think we've talked a little bit on and off. I've been with Impact since 2017, so November 2017, and to see where we are to where we are now, even through the pandemic. Like, I believe we came out of the pandemic the best out of all the companies. I mean, with all the acquisitions we have and everything. So, the management and Anthem, our parent company, they're not going to do anything to jeopardize anything. So baby steps. Trust me. It took I've been asking since like my first year at the company if we were going to get trading cards, if we are going to get back in the trading card market, because I'm a sports card collector personally. Right. And it's finally we got them this year. So, all right, everybody. So, Jarrett, thank you so much for joining me here. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for joining me here for this special look here at Super Bowl 56 coming up Sunday from SoFi Stadium in LA. Who Day as always, and I will see you guys here next Friday, 5 East 4 Central with Topps 2021 Series 1. I'm actually going to LA next week, right after the Super Bowl, actually. So I said out there, Topps, I work at a card shop, and Topps invited a couple of us to go to the Series 1 release event in LA. So I'm going out. I'm going to go out for that. So
very cool.
We'll see. Maybe we'll see that. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you next week, rounding third and heading for home. See you next week, everybody.